Probably the best and most anticipated part, the construction committee. Scott Krennick called. He gives his regrets. He apologizes he wasn't able to make it here tonight. He had to go out of town this morning for a meeting as he's a professional engineer and had to be on site for a contract meeting. He's on his way here. He might make it back before we're done, but he wasn't able to make it. So I'm just going to keep going here and kind of give you the overview of what Scott's doing. I am not much of a construction project manager, so if there's anything particularly I have questions on, I'm going to have to wait until Scott. But basically, the roles and responsibilities of the construction committee are pretty much simple. They're helping us manage the construction. So we turn to them to make RFQs, put out the proposals when it is time, and we are looking for services that we're going to have to purchase or equipment. Scott and his committee will actually write those RFQs. He's familiar with doing these sorts of things in his professional job, so he knows how to do that. He'll manage the bid process, putting it out for bid if that's what's going to happen. Obviously, they will review documentations, and they're in charge of everything from a recommendation standpoint. I turn to Scott. He's the one that's going to say how big that field's going to be, anything along those lines. So that's what the construction committee does. There's actually probably the most amount of people on the construction committee than any other committee. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is the intention with Scott and that committee is once we get into actually doing things, we are going to need those people. So if any of you were persons on that committee and kind of said, hey, I haven't really talked to anybody, really it's just been strictly a managerial process at this point for Scott to manage getting things from URS and et cetera. So don't be discouraged. There's a ton to still do there and will be, and we're still looking for some additional people as well. So current projects that the construction committee is managing is obviously the Jack Jones Memorial Complex and the Snowboro Skate Park. If you didn't already know, the location of the Jack Jones Memorial Complex is located just behind the old Slater Ford garage off of the Snowboro Lateral Road. As far as progress, as Scott mentioned, construction, if any of you came to this meeting that we held last year, we said we were going to begin construction in the spring of that year, was held up by delays kind of out of our control, the PMDI list and going into the DEP. So, but we did whatever we could, which was basically nothing until you get your DEP permits. You can't move 1 ounce of dirt, or else I could go to jail, and I didn't want to do that. So, but we did get the trees off. There was a large portion of trees that we initially thought were the property line, but as it turns out, a large part of the ball field was into that wooded area. So we had moved, removed the trees. In other words, we got all the timber down and off. The stumps are still there to be dealt with. And this was just some of the application to show you guys where some of the money that we brought in went to. URS had supplied the survey, and all of these items, if in the event anybody is wondering, wow, why do you go to so much detail, and why don't you use that money for something else? We had to. We have no choice. You can't get the DE permit. You can't even submit the DEP permit for the permit until you have these items. So the surveying was required. It was approximately $5,000. The grading plan, exactly how are you going to move the dirt, where are you going to move it, that was around $20,000. And the acronym Scott mentioned earlier, the soil erosion sedimentation plan, was around $10,000. And all of this just goes to, it is good responsibility to figure out what are you going to do with the rainwater when you start moving all that dirt. You can't throw it in the stream per se. You can't put it out on the road. You certainly can't put it in the neighbor's property. You got to be able to account for every ounce of displaced rainwater, put a plan together where it's going to go, and that's what these engineers did for us. These services actually cost more than this. This is what we applied monetarily to them, was around $35,000. I believe the total cost would have been in around $60,000 to $70,000. So the portion of the donation that they made was in there as well. I don't know if you can read this in the back of the room. This was the original timeline as put together by Pannoni and some of the original committee members that started this a long time ago. And originally it was phased to occur over 5 years. And if you look down here, you can see approximately each phase was at least $300,000 to around $400,000, with the exception of the final phase, which was some cosmetic items and lighting, some things that would be nice to have, but not a necessity. This was done, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the site plan was like 03, somewhere in that neighborhood, by a professional landscape architect. They were a firm out of Philadelphia, so at that time their pricing estimates probably were a little bit higher than what have seen in our area. However, given the amount of time and inflation, these cost estimates, as it turns out, in our area are actually pretty accurate for today. So the overall estimated cost, and again, this is from a standpoint of purchasing everything, was about $1.6 million, and it was supposed to occur over 5 years. Our hope is that we'll actually spend less than half of that in real cash value, and we can do it in 3 years. But just a quick rundown of what makes up that. The land survey was estimated at $10,000. Earthwork was estimated to cost $155,000. The large ball field, $153,000. Parking, roadways, pathways at $108,000. Electrical at almost $200,000. Concession, restroom, and storage was $443,000, which that was initially planned to also have a meeting room in it, so that's part of where it's a little bit larger than your typical shed concession stand. Small ball field was $95,000, large pavilions at $80,000, playground was $32,000, small field, $100,000. Lighting was estimated at $250,000, which we've recently researched that, and we would love to be able to get lighting for $250,000. It's probably not going to happen. Batting cages at $2,400, miscellaneous improvements $37,000, and additional parking at $28,000 for a total of $1.6. This is our actual budget for phase 1, and phase 1 is going to consist of the water services, which is getting the well in, the sewage services, which is going to be the septic additions, which has to be commercial. It can't be just a residential type use system. Fencing, dugouts, announcer's booth, accessories, finished product. In a nutshell, what we're shooting to do in phase 1 is the entire softball field, the entire small baseball field to a finished standpoint, and all the required ADA walkways, which is a requirement. Anytime you take money from the state, you now have to meet their specs to the letter of the law. So even if